Okay, now we are on live. So preparing. Yeah, we are here. Bienvenidos a todos, tanto a los que nos vean en vivo como a los que nos estarán viendo en la retransmisión o cuando este video se publique. Lu.
Hi there, welcome everybody. Welcome to this transmission, live transmission. Welcome to everybody who's right now live or afterwards.
Estamos aquí con el doctor David Benatar, que nos honra con su presencia.
We are right now here with Dr. David Benatar, who we are honored to have with.
Thank you.
Thanks, doctor. Thanks a lot. El doctor Benatar prefiere mantener la cámara apagada, así que solamente me verán a mí en la transmisión. Sin embargo, aquí está el doctor Benatar y también tenemos a una traductora que nos estará apoyando.
Dr. Benatar will have off his camera, but you will always see me in this interview and hear the translator.
Me voy a permitir solamente un par de oraciones en inglés para saludar al doctor Benatar.
I will allow myself a couple of sentences in English to say hello to Dr. David Benatar.
So, doctor, welcome to the society. This presentation is to welcome you for this induction to the society, the Iberoamerican Society on Pessimism Studies. We are really honored to have you as a new member, honorary member of our society, because all your work is very important on pessimism studies, on many other studies, but I think that you are now one of the most important pessimists, say it like that, philosophers. So thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the honor of the honorary membership, and I'm pleased to be with you and the other members of the society today.
Thank you very much. The other members are watching the transmission, or they will be. We have members on Spain, on Chile, Argentina, many countries here in Mexico, of course. So they will be watching this on different times, but thanks a lot, and you're really welcome. So, in order, okay, vuelvo a cambiar el chip, disculpen, para presentar al doctor Benatar. Bueno, además de que al final le entregaré el acta de que lo refiere como miembro honorario.
So I will take a time to present Dr. Benatar, and at the end, I will take the time to present the award and the papers to thank Dr. Benatar.
Thank you.
Okay, so give me a minute. Okay, Dr. David Benatar. David Benatar es profesor de filosofía y director del Centro de Bioética de la Universidad de Ciudad del Cabo, en Sudáfrica.
Dr. David Benatar, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's professor at a bioethical professor in Cape Town University.
No, it's a philosophy professor and director of the Bioethical Center in Cape Town University. Es autor de numerosos artículos.
He is author of many diverse articles.
Entre sus libros editados se encuentran
within the books he has published,
Life, Death and Meaning, es Vida, Muerte y Significado, ya en su tercera edición. Es autor de Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence, que está publicado por la Universidad de Oxford. It's published by Oxford University. Otro libro es The Second Sexism, Discrimination Against Men and Boys, Debating Procreation, este libro en coautoría con David Beiserman, también por la Universidad de Oxford, y The Human Predicament, A Candid Guide to Life's Biggest Questions, también por la Universidad de Oxford, y recientemente, 2021, this year, ha publicado The Fall of the University of Cape Town. Retomamos traducción. Ha ocupado puestos de visita en las universidades.
He has occupied a visit spot at the universities
o de Brandeis, Emory y Princeton, y en los institutos nacionales, the National Institute of Health in USA, institutos nacionales de salud en Estados Unidos. Esta es una, por supuesto, brevísima semblanza del doctor Benatar.
This is just a brief part of what Dr. Benatar has done.
En orden a, pues, presentar, él ya tiene una entrevista, estábamos hablando de eso fuera del aire, una entrevista en español.
He already has a Spanish interview. That's what we were speaking about before we were live.
Pero es cierto que el doctor ha comenzado a ser una figura muy reconocida en los países hispanoparlantes.
He has become a very, very known philosopher in Hispanic world.
Por lo tanto, aprovecharemos esta oportunidad para hacerle algunas preguntas, como una pequeña entrevista.
So we will be getting like a brief or small interview at this opportunity.
El doctor, yo voy a preguntarle, la traductora hará lo propio y el doctor contestará en inglés. De momento no haremos traducción para que el doctor se pueda extender.
I will ask in Spanish. There will be an English translator, and the Dr. Benatar will answer in English. The translator will not make a Spanish translation. It will be done afterwards.
Así el doctor puede hablar ampliamente y sin estar cortando.
So Dr. Benatar can feel free to have a long conversation or answer.
Muy bien. Primera pregunta, Dr. Benatar, first question. ¿Cuál considera que es su relación con el pesimismo clásico, la relación de su propuesta filosófica con el pesimismo clásico? Me refiero a Arthur Schopenhauer, a Philipp Mailander, Carlo Michael Stetta, entre otros.
First question, Dr. Benatar. What do you consider to be the relationship between your thesis and the classical pessimistic theory, taking into account authors such as Schopenhauer, Mailander, Michael Stetta?
Well, I should say that the way philosophy is done in South Africa is much like in other parts of the English-speaking world, where we focus more on problems than on historical figures. And so I actually came to my arguments independently and then heard about similarities between them and people like Arthur Schopenhauer. And I've subsequently read some other of these pessimistic philosophers as well. Clearly, there are some similarities, some points of overlap, but also some differences. So if we look at Arthur Schopenhauer, for example, this is somebody who, like me, is an antinatalist, somebody who believed it would have been better not to have been brought into existence. But let me say that pessimism is a very broad concept and a very broad category. It can apply to many different things. You can be pessimistic about big, important existential questions, but you could also be pessimistic about quite micro level questions as well. And so I don't expect that the views that I've espoused would have a lot in common with all forms of pessimism, but clearly they would have something in common with many forms of pessimism.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bueno, creo que aquí puedo yo traducir un poco para así evitarnos. I can translate a little bit in Spanish, so maybe we can. Okay.
He wants me to translate. So, el doctor Benatar comenta que como con alguno de los filósofos pesimistas puede encontrar cierta relación, por ejemplo, con Arthur Schopenhauer, que también era un antinatalista. Sin embargo, el concepto de pesimismo es un concepto bastante amplio y no espera que sus visiones, sus ideas tengan una conexión con todas las visiones pesimistas, pero sí con algunas.
Y también nos decía que en Sudáfrica y en esta tradición que está más hacia el mundo anglosajón, se trabajan más problemas. El doctor Beuchot les llamaría piecemeal work, más que historia. Entonces él primero trabajó problemas y de ahí encontró estas conexiones históricas con diferentes autores. So, doctor, next question. ¿Usted considera a Peter Wetzel-Zapfe como un antecedente de su teoría, una especie de maestro intelectual?
Dr. Benatar, next question. Do you consider Peter Wetzel-Zapfe as an antecedent of your theory, maybe a kind of intellectual master or teacher?
Well, again, I heard about this author, Peter Wetzel-Zapfe, only after writing much of what I've written about antinatalism. And then I did read some of what he said, but it's very little of what he said that is being translated into English. So I have very little first-hand access to his thoughts. He certainly was an antinatalist. There is lots in common between his thinking and my thinking. But the style of philosophy seems very different from what I can tell. Again, there are obviously different traditions in different parts of the world. In analytic philosophy, or the philosophy of the Anglo-speaking world, we're very much interested in precise arguments, in analysis, and sometimes people reach the same conclusions via different methodologies. And my sense is that he had a different methodology from the one that I have, but we're arriving at similar conclusions. But as I say again, this is based on a very limited exposure to what he said, given that his major works have not been translated into English, and unfortunately, I don't speak Norwegian.
Thank you very much. Can you translate? Son frases cortas, así que creo que no hay tanto problema.
Ok, el doctor Benatar comenta que sí ha escuchado sobre este autor, sobre dicho autor. Sin embargo, fue solamente después de sus aportaciones, ya que hay muy poco de él en inglés. Sí encuentra cosas en común, sin embargo, su estilo de filosofía es distinto. Puede decir que tienen ciertas conexiones, ciertos vínculos, pero a veces algunas personas alcanzan las mismas conclusiones, como en este caso, con diferentes metodologías. Considera que las metodologías utilizadas fueron distintas y desafortunadamente pues no hay muchas traducciones en inglés de dicho autor.
Third question, tercera pregunta. Doctor, ¿cuáles considera que son las similitudes y las diferencias? ¿Cuáles encuentra usted que son las similitudes y diferencias entre pesimismo y antinatalismo? Esto sobre la base de que hay quienes consideran que son corrientes muy cercanas, que de hecho el pesimismo es la base del antinatalismo y otros consideran que van por ciertos caminos distintos.
Dr. Benatar, third question. What similarities and differences do you find between pessimism and antinatalism? And is pessimism the basis of antinatalism?
Thank you. Interesting question. I think that antinatalism is a very particular view. It's the view that we ought not to bring new sentient beings into existence. Now, I think that one basis for that is a kind of pessimism. In other words, it's a recognition that the quality of even the best lives is not very good, and that the best way to prevent all the misery, all the suffering, all the death is by not bringing people into existence in the first place. So here we have a pessimistic view on the quality and nature of life, which can lead to an antinatalist conclusion. But I think that pessimism is a much broader approach. In other words, it's not going to just apply to questions of procreation. It will also apply to other questions. So let's imagine you already exist. You've either already reproduced or you don't plan to reproduce. And you are asking questions, let's say, about the meaning of life. Does life have meaning? Well, you may have a pessimistic answer to that question, and that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with procreation. I'm not saying it's unconnected, but it's not directly about procreation. So I would say pessimism is a broader approach, and then antinatalism is a particular view that one can arrive at from a pessimistic perspective.
Cool.
Ok. El doctor Benatar dice que el antinatalismo es muy particular. En cierta forma es un pesimismo al tener en cuenta que la calidad de vida es mala y tener en cuenta el sufrimiento. La visión pesimista de la vida puede resultar en un antinatalismo, claro, pero considera que el pesimismo es muy amplio. Imaginemos que ya existes y te preguntas si la vida tiene sentido. Eso no es antinatalismo, solamente es pesimismo, pero hasta cierto punto puede haber una conexión.
So in this way, Doctor, pessimism has a metaphysical view, for example, or political or even economical view. But what you're saying is that antinatalism is just maybe a part of a social pessimistic view, right?
I would say that pessimism is an approach to something. It's an attitude, but it can be an attitude about many different things. So you could be, let's say, pessimistic about the prospects for peace in a particular part of the world, or you can be pessimistic about what the economy will be like in a given country. Now, that's not anything to do with antinatalism in particular, but it is a grim view that you have about some particularity, about some particular matter. And I'm saying that antinatalism is a very specific view. It's, yes, partly a social view, but it's not only a social view. It can be just viewed as, I suppose, a kind of a view about the quality of life, or a view about the meaning of life. And you may have pessimistic views about that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not clear at all, and feel free to push back and seek clarity if I'm not being clear.
No, I think it's perfect. We're just waiting for the translation.
Oh, sure, sorry.
No, don't worry.
I'm sorry, I'm taking notes even. I'm even taking notes. Okay. El doctor Benatar diría que el pesimismo es una actitud, tal vez una visión. Menciona que puedo ser pesimista de incluso cómo será la economía o el mundo, y no tiene que ver con una visión de antinatalismo per se, ya que el antinatalismo es una visión específica, a diferencia del pesimismo, que incluso tiene una visión más amplia.
¿Cuál considera o ¿cómo podría resumir sus principales tesis o postulados, doctor?
Dr. Benatar, how could you summarize, give us some points of your main thesis or ideas?
Well, I've written on quite a few things. So antinatalism is one component of it, but I have written more broadly on what I call the human predicament. And I argue for a collection of theses there. And the one is that there can be no cosmic meaning to life. There is no cosmic meaning to life, but that we can derive some kinds of terrestrial meaning, sort of more localized forms of meaning. Your life can have significance for the people around you, sometimes for broader communities. So that sort of limited kind of meaning is possible, but broader cosmic meaning, ultimate meaning, that is not possible. So that's one thesis I argue for. Another is that death is bad for the person who dies, contrary to the Epicurean view, and that therefore suicide is not a solution to the human predicament. It might be a solution to some components of the human predicament, but it's not a solution to the whole predicament. Because once we exist, we have an interest in continuing to exist, and death, including death by suicide, would thwart that interest. I'm not denying that sometimes suicide and death might be the lesser of two evils. In other words, I'm not denying that life can become so bad that you would be better off being dead. I just don't think that that's true for people routinely. It may be true in extreme circumstances, but not true routinely. I also argue that the option of immortality would be a good thing. Of course, we can't have that. It's going to be practically and biologically impossible. But that is another negative feature of the human predicament, that we have very limited time spans, lifespans, and that we will die all too soon. So those are among the theses that I argue for. And these, by the way, do all support the antinatalist conclusion, because the best way to avoid the human predicament, in fact, the only way to avoid the human predicament, is by avoiding bringing somebody into existence in the first place.
Yeah, so translator ask a second, doctor, just to put all the notes and try to translate all the idea, all the
Sure,
possible
I know
idea.
I said a lot there. I apologize for saying so much.
No, thank you very much. On contrary, I think this is really interesting interview presentation. So please just expand yourself all you want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ok, el doctor Benatar nos comenta que ha escrito varias cosas, no nada más sobre antinatalismo. Nos comenta primero que ha escrito de este, vamos a traducirlo como predicamento humano que tenemos. Uno, comenta que no hay una visión cósmica de la vida, sino una vida con un significado a los alrededores. Y dos, que la vida es mala para las personas ya que está la muerte, contrario a la vida que mencionaba Epicuro. La vida es mala, o sea, al fin y al cabo, cuando existimos, termina en muerte. Comentó un poco también sobre el suicidio, ya que tiene que ver con este entorno pesimista, y que la vida puede ser tan mala que a veces sería mejor la muerte. No es algo que él diría, contrario a estas ideas pesimistas del suicidio. Él comentaría que ser inmortal sería excelente, sería bueno, aunque biológicamente pues no es algo que pueda pasar. Y aunque estas ideas no son las mismas que el antinatalismo, todas estas llevan a él, al antinatalismo.
I think you muted.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So the last two questions, doctor. First, First one, ¿cómo evaluaría para traer un poco a la actualidad sus postulados la actual pandemia desde su visión del mundo, desde su teoría?
Doctor, last two questions. How do you evaluate the current pandemic according to your philosophical postulates or ideas?
Well, first of all, the pandemic doesn't come as a surprise to me. I actually wrote something about 13 or 14 years ago saying that it was just a matter of time before we would have a pandemic. And that's because pandemics come around at a certain level of frequency. The last major one we had was over 100 years ago, but they do occur. And I think this is just another feature of the suffering of life. We see how much suffering and death this pandemic has caused, not just in terms of the disease, but in terms of the disruption of human life and the economic implications and the quality of life implications for many people. So it doesn't come as a surprise to me, and I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise to the pessimists who are listening today. This is exactly the kind of thing that pessimists would expect. I also think that the origins of the pandemic arise from our maltreatment of animals. This is something that I've also written about in the past. There is a debate now, I know, about what the precise origins of this pandemic are, but in general, pandemics do arise from animals, and then they cross the species barrier into humans. And in very many cases, this has been the result of human maltreatment of animals. And so I think that one lesson we can learn from this is to try to treat animals better, because it would actually be to our advantage as well.
In this way, you have this kind of misanthropic argument, if I remember well. Which one do you consider it's the best solution for the Earth in this sense? The extinction of humanity? Let me just translate this part that I said. El doctor tiene un argumento al que podemos denominar el argumento misantrópico. Y le pregunto a partir de él cuál considera que es la mejor solución para los problemas actuales e históricos que estamos viviendo como seres humanos, esta destrucción de la naturaleza. We are destroying the nature. So, ¿cuál es la mejor solución si es la extinción del ser humano?
Thank you. I do advance both philanthropic and misanthropic arguments for antinatalism. Most of the work I've done is on philanthropic arguments, mainly because I think those are the arguments which produce the most categorical antinatalist conclusions. So let me just perhaps differentiate what I mean by these. Philanthropic arguments for antinatalism are arguments that are rooted in the well-being of the being that you would bring into existence. So if you're contemplating bringing a child into existence and you're worried about that child's well-being, you're worried that it will suffer and it will eventually die, then your concerns are philanthropic. Misanthropic arguments are where you're worried about what the impact of the child you create will have on other beings, other human beings, and also on the planet and on non-human animals. So some climate arguments, for example, are misanthropic, not all of them, but some climate change arguments say, well, if we produce another child, there'll be another carbon emitter, somebody else who's consuming the Earth's resources, somebody else who's going to contribute to the whole climate change problem, and therefore I should desist from having that child. That's a misanthropic climate argument. There are also philanthropic climate arguments, because some people say, well, if I have a child now, then this child will suffer because the environment it will live in will be a much deteriorated and degraded environment, and therefore this child's quality of life will be lower. And so I don't think that the philanthropic arguments and the misanthropic arguments are mutually exclusive. I think that they can both hold at the same time. But to answer your question in summary, I would say the philanthropic arguments are the more categorical ones. Those are the ones that produce the stronger conclusion, the stronger antinatalist conclusion.
Thank you, Dr. Benatar. Voy a contestar en dos partes. La primera fue la respuesta pasada. en donde el doctor Benatar menciona que no le sorprende la pandemia, que ya hace 30 o 40 años escribió sobre ello, y que hace aproximadamente 100 años se tuvo también una gran pandemia. Ahí, una vez más, observamos el sufrimiento de la vida, no nada más en pérdidas, sino en pérdidas económicas también, en pérdidas de vida y económicas. No considera que los pesimistas estén sorprendidos por la pandemia y cree que el resultado de esta pandemia, más bien cree que como resultado la pandemia es debido al maltrato animal. Él considera que debemos tratar mejor a los animales. La segunda parte de la respuesta menciona que su trabajo ha sido más filantrópico, ya que se basa en la existencia del ser, de un ser que esté bien, sin sufrimiento. Él hace una distinción en ambos. El primero tiene que ver con la existencia de un ser que no tenga sufrimiento, que esté bien, y el segundo, los misanthropic arguments, tienen que ver con el cambio de clima. Por ejemplo, no traigo hijos al mundo porque no habrá recursos suficientes o va a sufrir por el medio ambiente que ya existe. Menciona finalmente que no son exclusivos, pueden ser ambos, sin embargo los más categóricos, los más fuertes son los filantrópicos.
Y como última pregunta, doctor, como ya le comentaba en el mundo hispanoparlante, usted es una figura que cada vez es más reconocida y este video también me gustaría a modo de que mucha de la gente que nos sigue, mucha gente que seguramente lo verá en YouTube, mucha gente, pues tenga acceso de primera mano a conocerlo. Por lo tanto, algo que quisiera decirle al público hispanoparlante respecto a sus teorías, respecto al antinatalismo, respecto a lo que sea.
Okay, doctor, the last question. You are a very recognized figure. And if our audience can access to your theories and your information, is there something you would like to say to the Spanish-speaking audience, finally, about your ideas or antinatalism?
Thank you. I think your questions that you've asked already have given an opportunity for me to give a taste of my views to the Spanish-speaking audience. One of the things I'm always acutely aware of is the language barrier. I regret not being able to communicate more directly with people that speak other languages. I know that you speak English very well, and I'm sorry I don't speak Spanish much better. There are members of my family that do, but regrettably I don't. And I'm sorry I can't speak more directly to them all in Spanish. But I'm very grateful that some of my works are now being translated into Spanish and will now be accessible to Spanish-speaking audiences.
Considera el doctor Benatar que las preguntas anteriores ya dieron pie a platicar un poco de estas ideas, de sus teorías. Siente mucho que existe esta barrera del lenguaje que es un poquito compleja. Está un poco triste de no poder hablar español, pero está muy agradecido de que se haya comenzado con la traducción de sus ideas, de sus teorías en español.
Decir a ese respecto que en la sociedad estamos trabajando para conseguir la opción de traducir uno de los textos más importantes del doctor Benatar y poderlo llevar a nuestro mundo hispano. ¿Sí?
Okay, to remark that in the society we're working to translate one of his most important works, in Spanish, so we can take these theories, ideas, and valuable information to the Spanish-speaking audience.
Para terminar este acto protocolario, doctor, me gustaría hacer la entrega aquí en vivo y después se lo envío a su correo de el certificado de afiliación como miembro honorario de la Sociedad Iberoamericana de Estudios sobre Pesimismo.
To finalize, I would like to give to you the certificate as an honorary member of the Society of the Ibero-American Society on Pessimism Studies, SIEP.
So,
thank you very much. I'm very grateful indeed.
Thanks a lot, Doctor. Membership certificate. This certificate recognizes Dr. David Benatar as an honorary member of the Ibero-American Society on Pessimism Studies, SIEP, and it's signed by myself. I'm the current president of the society, so I will send you this by email. And now you are officially an honorary member, Doctor.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. I'm delighted to be part of your organization.
Thanks. And espero que esta pequeña entrevista con el doctor haya suscite más interés en él por parte de nuestra audiencia, que lo conozcan un poco más a profundidad y esperemos próximamente poder tener una conferencia magistral de su parte.
So we hope to get to more people with Dr. Benatar's ideas so they can get to know him better. And we hope that in the future we can have a more formal conference with his ideas and theories.
So, Doctor, you are invited in the near future to give a conference here with us, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And although we are all pessimists, I'm optimistic that we will meet in due course.
Sure, and we will have a chance to have this conference. Maybe if you want to work on your books, you have open doors in the society. So feel free to wherever you need in our chances in the Hispanic world, you feel free to ask it. So. Welcome.
That's very kind. I appreciate that. Very kind indeed. Thank you to you and the other members of the society.
Thanks a lot. And con esto, and with this we finish. Con esto terminamos the presentation, la presentación, la inducción del Dr. Benatar como miembro honorario, as an honorary member of the Society, the Ibero-American Society on Pessimism Studies. So, thanks a lot, Doctor, and goodbye to all our viewers.
Thank you.